Transformation is driven by intention, not time. Many people believe that change requires a long stretch of months or even years, but the reality is that change can begin instantly the moment a clear decision is made. The power lies not in the calendar, but in the level of seriousness you bring to the decision. When a person does something with genuine commitment rather than casual interest, even a single week can become a turning point. Time is not the limiting factor. Purpose is. When intention is lacking, actions become scattered and inconsistent. People may attempt new habits or try to be more disciplined, but without a deep internal reason, the effort fades quickly. This is why so many New Year's resolutions fail. They are desires, not decisions. Intention gives decisions weight. It gives every action meaning. It transforms routine tasks into purposeful progress. A person who chooses transformation with intention approaches each day differently. They wake up aware of what they are doing and why they are doing it. They do not move out of habit or pressure from others. They move because they have chosen to evolve. This internal shift is what creates external change. Without this shift, change remains temporary and fragile. Consider how athletes, entrepreneurs, or creators rise to remarkable achievement. It is not simply because they have more hours than others. It is because their intentions are precise and unwavering. They direct their energy towards something meaningful. They do not waste effort trying to impress or compare. They apply deliberate effort to a specific direction, and that is what accelerates progress. When you decide to change with intention, distractions naturally become less appealing. Your priorities rearrange themselves. What once felt urgent or entertaining begins to feel trivial. You are no longer simply passing time. You are shaping your life. This conscious shift in values alone can create a dramatic difference in a short amount of time. Even small tasks gain significance when intention is guiding them. Eating better, exercising, learning, planning, and even resting becomes strategic rather than accidental. Consistency becomes easier because each action is backed by purpose. Intention reduces the mental struggle of discipline. You are no longer forcing yourself to change. You are aligning yourself with who you are choosing to become. Time by itself does nothing. Days and weeks will pass whether you use them or not. People often confuse the passage of time with progress, assuming that simply waiting will create transformation. But waiting changes nothing. It is the decisions made within the time that create impact. Intention ensures those decisions are strong and consistent. A week of focused intention can reveal a version of yourself you may not have seen in years. It can show you that strength, discipline, and clarity were never missing. They were simply inactive. When intention awakens them, they reappear with force. This is why transformation can feel sudden, even though the potential was always present. Intention also shapes identity. When you choose to act with purpose, you begin to see yourself differently. You start to believe you are capable, reliable, and strong. Identity is not built from wishes. It is built from actions rooted in intention. Once you see yourself differently, your habits begin to follow that new identity naturally. Change becomes powerful when you are no longer trying to become someone else, but instead choosing to return to the strongest version of yourself. Intention is the switch that turns potential into progress. Without it, time drifts by. With it, even 1 week becomes enough to start becoming unrecognizable from who you were before. A strong why fuels lasting habits. When habits are built without a compelling reason behind them, they remain fragile and temporary. People often try to change their routines because they think they should, or because they see others doing it. But imitation is not enough to sustain effort. Without a personal reason that truly matters, the discipline required to maintain new habits will eventually collapse under pressure or fatigue. The why serves as emotional reinforcement, giving depth and meaning to every action taken. This why must be personal. It cannot be borrowed from motivational videos, social expectations, or generic goals. It must be rooted in something that touches your identity, your values, and the future you want to create. When the reason is personal, it becomes non-negotiable. Challenges become obstacles to navigate rather than excuses to quit. The difference between a habit that lasts 1 week and a habit that lasts a lifetime is the strength of the emotional reason behind it. When a person knows their why, they are willing to endure discomfort. They can wake up earlier even when tired, continue working when results are not yet visible, and make sacrifices others consider too difficult. The why transforms effort from something burdensome into something necessary. It becomes easier to say no to distractions because the meaning behind the action is clear. Discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like alignment. Most people are not lacking discipline, they are lacking clarity. They try to force themselves into habits without recognizing that the foundation of any habit is desire guided by purpose. When purpose is unclear, habits require excessive willpower to maintain. But when the purpose is strong, habits become almost automatic. This is why understanding your reason for growth is more important than the habits themselves. Purpose drives consistency. The why also provides resilience during setbacks. Change is never a smooth and uninterrupted upward climb. There will be days of frustration, exhaustion, failure, or doubt. Without a powerful reason, it is easy to abandon progress when these moments appear. But when the reason is meaningful enough, setbacks are integrated into the journey rather than treated as signs to stop. The why reminds you of what is at stake. This internal motivation must be revisited regularly. It is not enough to identify it once and move on. Repetition strengthens emotional connection. People who stay committed do not simply rely on memory. They reaffirm their purpose daily. They write it down, visualize it, and speak it to themselves with conviction. The more familiar the why becomes, the stronger its influence over behavior. There is also a psychological shift that happens when a strong reason is paired with consistent action. A person begins to see themselves differently. The identity changes first in feeling, then in behavior, and finally in results. The why becomes a lens through which every decision is filtered. It becomes a personal standard rather than a temporary goal. Identity anchored in purpose is far more stable than identity anchored in motivation. Habits that lack meaning feel like obligations. They create internal resistance. You have to push yourself repeatedly to continue, but habits supported by a strong reason feel like steps towards something significant. They create forward pull rather than backwards push. Instead of trying to escape discomfort, a person embraces it because they see how it serves them. The strength of the why can often be measured by emotion. If the reason does not stir you, challenge you, or move you, it will not sustain you. A goal that is emotionally neutral cannot compete with the pull of convenience or comfort. But when the reason is tied to identity, dignity, legacy, or personal freedom, the emotional weight is strong enough to override temporary urges. Ultimately, the why is what ensures that habits become part of your lifestyle rather than temporary experiments. It converts effort into purpose, routine into progress, and discipline into self-respect. Without a meaningful reason, habits fade. With one, they evolve into lasting change. Identity shifts when commitment shifts. A person does not become unrecognizable by simply changing their hairstyle, wardrobe, or schedule. Those are surface-level alterations. Real transformation begins when someone decides to commit to a new standard for themselves. The identity changes first internally, in thought and belief, before any external transformation becomes visible. When commitment deepens, identity stabilizes around those new behaviors, and the person begins to naturally act in alignment with who they believe they are becoming. Many people attempt to change their behavior while keeping the same self-image. They try to act disciplined while still believing they are inconsistent. They try to be confident while believing they are insecure. This creates internal conflict. The brain resists new behavior when it contradicts an old identity. But when the commitment is strong enough, the identity begins to shift and behavior follows. You no longer try to be disciplined. You see yourself as someone who is disciplined, and your actions reflect that naturally. Commitment also changes the way a person interprets challenges. When someone has a weak commitment, obstacles feel like reasons to stop. A bad day, a difficult task, or a lack of immediate results can discourage them easily. But once commitment becomes personal, challenges are reframed as part of the process. They stop questioning whether they should continue and instead ask how to continue better. This mindset shift marks the beginning of a new identity taking shape. Identity is also shaped by what a person tolerates. When commitment strengthens, tolerance for self-sabotage, excuses, and repeated hesitation weakens. Person begins to catch themselves more quickly when falling into old patterns. They interrupt the old identity rather than reinforcing it. Over time, these interruptions break old cycles and reinforce new ones, gradually building a more consistent and powerful self-image. The change in identity does not require external validation. In fact, it often begins quietly and privately. People around you may not notice your transformation immediately because the shift is occurring in the decisions you make and the thoughts you choose to entertain. The internal language changes first. You begin speaking to yourself with more decisiveness and more clarity. The internal voice becomes a mentor rather than a critic. This internal transformation also affects how a person carries themselves. Posture, tone of voice, eye contact, and even the pace of decision-making begin to shift. You start to move in a way that reflects confidence rather than hesitation. You become less reactive to external opinions because your identity is no longer dependent on how others perceive you. Your commitment is not for their validation, but for your own alignment. When commitment shifts, the mind becomes less interested in short-term pleasure and more interested in long-term self-respect. You begin prioritizing actions that reinforce the identity you want to embody rather than seeking temporary comfort. This does not require force or pressure. It becomes a natural preference. You start wanting the things that serve you rather than the things that distract you. Identity also influences environment. As commitment strengthens, you naturally distance yourself from environments, conversations, and habits that reinforce your old identity. You begin seeking surroundings that support your growth, not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because the old environment simply does not match who you are becoming. This shift often happens gradually but powerfully. The new identity is built through consistency, not intensity. It emerges through repeated alignment with your chosen standards. Even small follow-through moments reinforce identity. Each time you keep your word to yourself, you strengthen the internal trust that supports transformation. Confidence does not appear suddenly. It grows through cumulative evidence of your own reliability. Over time, commitment becomes identity, and identity becomes behavior. Change becomes natural because you are no longer forcing yourself to act differently. You are simply being the person you have chosen to become. Environment influences evolution. The people, spaces, and conversations that surround you shape your mindset, your expectations, and your sense of possibility. Even the strongest personal ambition can be slowed or diluted when constantly surrounded by negativity, distraction, or complacency. Growth requires an environment that supports, challenges, and aligns with who you are trying to become. Without that support, even the most committed individual will find progress harder than it needs to be. Many habits are not the result of personal weakness, but of environmental reinforcement. If everyone around you avoids responsibility, you begin to mirror that behavior without realizing it. If your environment encourages distraction, you will struggle to stay focused. Human beings adapt to the norm of the spaces they occupy. If the norm is mediocrity, it becomes difficult to strive for excellence. This is why changing one's environment often accelerates change more effectively than sheer force of will. Creating an environment that supports transformation does not require abandoning everything or everyone. It starts with awareness. Becoming conscious of the influences around you allows you to see which aspects of your life align with your goals and which do not. From there, adjustments can be made slowly and deliberately. Even small changes in routine, space organization, or daily inputs can shift the energy you operate in. One of the most powerful environment changes is the control of information intake. The music you listen to, the content you watch, the voices you follow online, and the conversations you engage in all shape your mindset. These influences shape your concept of what is normal. When you consistently consume sources that encourage growth, confidence, and clarity, your mental environment becomes sharper and more resilient. What you feed your mind becomes what your mind feeds back to you. Physical environment matters as well. Clean, organized spaces promote clearer thinking and quicker decision-making. Environments filled with clutter, noise, and chaos create mental friction that slows progress. Order, structure, and intentional space design signal to the brain that your goals are meaningful. When your environment supports discipline, discipline becomes easier to maintain. You are not fighting against your surroundings reinforce your intentions. Relationships also play a critical role. The people closest to you either encourage your growth or pull you back into old cycles. Some people will feel threatened when you begin to change because your growth challenges their comfort. Others will support your transformation because they want to see you rise. Identifying which allows you to adjust emotional investment without resentment. You do not need to cut everyone out. You simply change how much influence they have. Silence is another environmental factor that is often overlooked. Time alone, without distraction, gives space for clarity, reflection, and self-direction. Many people avoid silence because it forces them to confront themselves. But silence is where identity strengthens and purpose stabilizes. An environment that allows quiet thought becomes a foundation for powerful decision-making. Consistent reflection strengthens intention and reduces confusion. Environment also shapes momentum. When you place yourself in spaces where growth is expected, such as gyms, libraries, work, focused rooms, or among high-standard peers, momentum becomes natural. The energy of the environment pulls you forward instead of requiring constant internal effort. You begin to feel uncomfortable not progressing. This discomfort becomes a powerful motivator that reinforces change. The environment you choose sends a message to yourself about what you value. Selecting spaces and influences that align with your future self is a declaration of seriousness. It signals that growth is not just something you hope for, but something you are actively building. Over time, these environmental choices become a framework that holds your identity steady as you evolve. Transformation becomes more achievable when your environment and your intentions move in the same direction. When your surroundings, habits, relationships, and mindset reflect the person you want to become, the path forward becomes clearer and more sustainable. Consistent follow-through builds confidence. Confidence is not something that appears suddenly or is gifted to certain people at birth. It is earned over time through patterns of action that reinforce a person's belief in their own reliability. When you make a promise to yourself and keep it, even in small ways, you strengthen the internal trust that fuels confidence. When you break those promises, you weaken that trust, often without realizing it. The foundation of confidence is self-respect, and self-respect is built through consistent follow-through. Most people believe confidence comes from achieving large accomplishments, but it is the accumulation of small, consistent actions that truly matters. Waking up when you said you would, completing tasks that are easy to avoid, showing discipline when no one is watching. These are the moments that shape your identity. Confidence grows from the evidence you create. Every time you do what you said you would do, you send a message to yourself that you can be relied upon. Follow through also establishes clarity. When you follow through, you demonstrate that your goals are not temporary wishes but intentional pursuits. This clarity helps eliminate mental conflict and hesitation. Decisions become faster, and energy becomes more directed. Instead of questioning your abilities, you begin to act with steady assurance. This clarity does not come from external validation. It comes from repeatedly proving your commitment to yourself. The struggle many people face is not a lack of ability, but a pattern of stopping early. They start strong but lose commitment when motivation fades. Follow through requires continuing when the emotional excitement disappears. True confidence develops when you push through moments of fatigue, uncertainty, or doubt. It is in these moments that the identity of a disciplined person is formed. The ability to act without relying on motivation is what separates temporary effort from lasting change. Follow through also shifts your relationship with discomfort. Most worthwhile goals require effort that is not always enjoyable. When you consistently follow through, you train your mind to accept discomfort as part of the process rather than something to avoid. You stop negotiating with yourself. The internal dialogue becomes steadier, quieter, more focused. Discipline becomes less about battling resistance and more about maintaining direction. Small tasks can carry great weight when done consistently. Taking time each day to execute even the simplest commitment builds momentum. That momentum becomes self-reinforcing. You start seeking out progress because progress begins to feel natural. Follow-through removes the emotional roller coaster from personal development. It stabilizes your growth. You become less reactive, more intentional, more grounded. Confidence that is built through follow-through is stable and resilient. It does not disappear in difficult situations. It does not rely on whether others approve or recognize your effort. It remains strong because it comes from internal proof, not external praise. This type of confidence allows a person to move forward even when results are not immediate. They trust themselves because they have given themselves reason to trust. Follow through also influences how others perceive you. People respond differently to someone who consistently does what they say. Your words carry more weight. Your presence feels more certain. You become someone who is taken seriously because you take yourself seriously. You no longer need to convince others of your capability. Your actions demonstrate it for you. The process of building confidence through follow-through requires patience. It is not about dramatic change in a single moment, but about deliberate repetition over time. However, it does not require perfection. Even when you slip, choosing to resume your commitment strengthens identity. What matters is not flawless execution, but refusal to abandon the standard you set for yourself. In the end, confidence is not something you seek. It is something you create. It comes from showing up for yourself day after day, honoring your commitments, and building proof of your own reliability. Follow-through is the mechanism that turns goals into outcomes and potential into reality. Power is earned quietly before it is seen publicly. Real strength does not begin with recognition, applause, or external validation. It begins internally, in private decisions and disciplined actions that no one else witnesses. The quiet phase of growth is where identity solidifies and resilience develops. This is the time when a person learns to rely on themselves, to push forward without external reward, and to stay committed without needing acknowledgement. The public moment of recognition is only a reflection of what has already been built in silence. Many people seek immediate visibility. They want others to see their effort, praise their progress, or validate their ambition. But power built for recognition is unstable and short-lived. When the motivation is external, the commitment fades as soon as the praise disappears. However, when a person learns to work without being seen or complimented, their progress becomes self-driven. They no longer rely on external approval to continue. They continue because the growth itself matters. The unseen phase of transformation is uncomfortable, but essential. This is where doubt shows up most strongly because there is no proof yet. There are no results to celebrate, no reassurance to lean on, and no audience to encourage you. It is in this phase that many people stop, assuming that the lack of visible progress means failure. But growth is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. Roots grow before branches, foundation forms before structure. Those who understand this quiet phase learn patience. They learn to appreciate progress that is not yet visible. They understand that the most powerful changes occur beneath the surface, where consistency and belief are tested. This phase strengthens character. It removes the need for validation and replaces it with self-assurance. When this confidence is built internally, it cannot be taken away by circumstances or opinions. This quiet accumulation of strength shows up in subtle ways. You notice you react differently. You think more clearly. You hesitate less. You follow through more consistently. Your presence changes even before your results do. People may not know what is different about you, but they sense the shift. Power radiates first as energy, not achievement. It is the confidence that comes from knowing you are becoming stronger, even if no one else sees it yet. The moment others begin to notice is simply the surface echo of months or years of private effort. What looks like sudden progress is rarely sudden. It is the result of countless unnoticed repetitions, revisions, and refinements. The public sees the transformation only once it becomes impossible to ignore. Quiet phase is where the transformation actually happens. The public phase is only where it is revealed. This is why comparison is misleading. When you compare your behind the scenes work to someone else's visible success, you are comparing two different stages of growth. You only see the results of their private commitment, not the commitment itself. Recognizing this allows you to stay focused on your own journey instead of being discouraged by the visible progress of others. Progress is not always visible, but it is always building. Powerful individuals do not rush to be seen. They are not in competition with time or attention. They are in alignment with development. They trust the process enough to stay consistent even when no one is watching. This trust builds a deep sense of stability. They do not rise quickly only to fall just as fast. Their foundation is strong because it was built slowly and intentionally. Once the private effort becomes strong enough, it begins to show in every aspect of a person's life. Their decisions become bolder. Their standards become higher. Their direction becomes clearer. The world eventually recognizes this shift, not because the person tried to be recognized, but because it is impossible to overlook genuine transformation. Power that is earned quietly carries a presence that requires no explanation. Becoming unrecognizable to your former self happens long before anyone else sees it. The transformation begins within, grows through consistency, and eventually becomes visible through results. The quiet stage is not the waiting stage, it is the building stage. Only those who respect this part of the journey experience the strength that cannot be shaken.